Welcome back. Joining me now, Republican Senator from West Virginia and Appropriations Committee member Shelley Capito. She's also chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security. Senator, it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you, Kasie. Good to be on.
Let's start with what you are focused on this week coming up in West Virginia, and that is the opioid epidemic. This, of course, has been something that has deeply affected so many American communities, but has, frankly, been pushed out of the spotlight sometimes by some of the other issues that have been the focus during the Trump administration. Do you feel as though meaningful progress is being made on combating this epidemic from your position in Congress, or are we still at a point where this is getting worse as opposed to any better?
Well, I think you're seeing the latest statistics that are coming out for the end of 2018 to actually see some improvement in terms of overdoses. But what's really been good, I think, is the things that we've done in the Senate and bipartisan and the House with the president's signature, of course, starting with stopping the flow of drugs into the country, fentanyl in particular. We've really worked on that. We've also worked on to answer the questions of drug courts and treatment, naloxone availability, all kinds of transitional programs. Once you go to recovery, where are you going to go from there? But it's hit us particularly hard. And we have a lot of solutions here in West Virginia, and we're going to show that to the acting secretary tomorrow on his visit to West Virginia.
What is your ask for him? What do you need from DHS to help people who are so affected by this?
Well, one of the things that we put into the budget for DHS was at the border, at the entry border centers, to make sure that we have better detection equipment, so that we have non-intrusive inspections, so that when trucks are coming through, you can actually detect it without having to go through every single semi to find that, kilo of heroin buried in the middle. And they're working on that technology. That was something that the secretary wanted and the president wanted, and we moved forward on that. We're also working on stopping it coming in through the mail, which is very helpful, again, for our Border Patrol and our immigration folks. So, those are the kinds of things. We're also going to be looking at forensic evidence. We're doing a program with Marshall University to talk about that. And then we're going to talk to first responders who are really at the ground level, that are administering the naloxone, that are working with rapid response teams to be able to meet this crisis at the community level, which I think the secretary will be interested to see.
Senator, let's since you raise this issue of immigration and what's happening on the border, I want to talk about that a little bit more broadly, because quite frankly, what we've been hearing from the DHS's own Inspector General, from reporting accounts on the ground, from children held at these facilities. I mean, we have some just absolutely heartbreaking pictures that, children who are held at some of our facilities have drawn, presumably of, depicting themselves, conditions in which they've been living. They're often separated from family members. We've heard reports of them on the phone with their family members or their loved ones crying. We haven't had, they've been in soiled clothing with no access to diapers. How is it that this is going on in America?
Well, I mean, I join with you and others who see pictures like this and get so they're disturbing, and they are, I think, emblematic of the deep problem and crisis, humanitarian crisis that we have at the border, which is why this $4.6 billion that we passed was so absolutely critical, not just for medical facilities, but to just handle the crowd. I mean, we don't want to have children in custody for more than 72 hours, and some of these children were being held longer than that. But DHHS did not have the facilities to be able to move and transport children. So that's why this money will be absolutely critical to solving some of these issues. But I can't defend, and I don't think anybody would, and I don't think the acting secretary is either, in terms of cruel treatment or inhumane treatment. All of this needs to be uncovered if it's happening, and where it's happening, and corrected, but it shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't.
Well, I mean, the president, did say that some of these, the facilities are doing a great job. Kevin McAleenan said that, a report on one facility referring to Clint, Texas, has tainted the entire system. I mean, do you trust President Trump to treat these migrant children the way any child in the world should be taken care of if they came to the United States?
You know, I think the issue is, do we have the manpower, the medical facilities, the beds? We have a fight about beds every time. Appropriations. How many beds do we have? How many can we house at a certain facility? This is an issue of funding and resources because of last month, 133,000 people, over 80,000 of those were families. We're just not, we weren't prepared. The president and the acting secretary have been talking about this for months. So I think that and I think the president, although, you know, he may express it differently, I don't think that he wants to see any child in these kinds of conditions that have been described. And so to get the resources, which he's been pushing for, is absolutely critical.
Still, there have been reports that, you know, the New York Times, for example, this reported, they did a deep dive into this Clint facility. They kind of drew it out.
I read it.
They named the guy who runs it and had quoted him as saying some questionable things about, he's known as an immigration hardliner. He is not somebody that seems to have a lot of sympathy. And the facility was rejecting donations of diapers and food and other things. I mean, how do we, make sure that the people who are running these facilities are doing it in a way that accords, I mean, not just with our values, but with our laws?
Right. Well, I mean, that's what oversight's for. I think that's what an inspector general's report is for. Of course, like anybody, I would rather see it not occurring so we wouldn't have to hear about it after it's already occurred. But we've got to prevent going forward. And that's what the aid, the humanitarian aid, is absolutely critical for. And if there are bad actors in the Border Patrol, I heard the acting secretary say this morning that those folks will be disciplined to the full extent of the employment laws at Border Patrol, which I think are very stringent. There are a lot of really good people that work there that are doing the right thing. They are simply overrun. And when you're overrun, deluged, and there's too much happening at one time, sometimes things happen that are unintended. And I think that's what's happened here.
Well, I certainly think the New York Times story did reflect that there were clearly some members of the Border Patrol who are very troubled by this and who are trying to do the right thing. Yeah. So, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, thank you very much for being on the